Good morning. I'm Susan Demas, the executive editor here at Lincoln Square. And joining me today is Edwin Eisendrath, as always, on Tuesday mornings. Edwin hosts the Democracy Stupid right here on Lincoln Square. That's the name of his Substack. And it is also the name of his show on Heartland Signal on Chicago radio, which you can listen to over the weekends or anytime online. Edwin, thank you so much for being here, as always.
I'm happy to be here and so proud of my country right now. Wow.
Well, here's where we're at right now with the Iran war. We have 6 U.S. service members who have been killed. More than 700 people are dead in Iran. The U.S. is now calling for Americans to leave over a dozen countries in the Middle East. Edwin, you spent years working in the Middle East, so I'd really like to get your thoughts on this conflict because it's already spread beyond Iran's borders. Do you feel that this war is spinning out of control?
It was never in control. We didn't have a reason to go to war. We had a bunch of ideas thrown out there about why. Certainly no reason to go to war now, at least no reason that relates over there. We had some domestic political reasons that drove it. But look, for decades, what every serious policy person in that part of the world knew was the most dangerous thing that had to be avoided was an Arab-Persian war. Was Sunni-Shia war. That's the conflict that involves, hundreds of millions of people and has overhung that region for decades. It's enormously volatile and dangerous. And Donald Trump didn't think about that, and he lit a fuse that has the potential to spill into such a disastrous war involving so many people from Kashmir to maybe parts of Turkey to, all the way to just a huge chunk of the planet could be enveloped in this if we aren't careful. And who wanted this war? Who wanted this war? Well, Bibi Netanyahu has staked his personal career on making sure that Iran is the enemy. And Iran is deeply weakened based on a year's worth of battles with their proxies all over the place. Let's be clear. We are going to war because Iran is weak, not because Iran is strong.
Right.
We're going to war because Bibi thought there's a potential to finally take out Hezbollah, or at least weaken them more, and because he needs to bolster himself at home. But let's just back up for 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
Years of absolute military superiority and brutal war has not ended Hamas's existence in Gaza. And Gaza is tiny and Iran is huge. Right? What is the possible thinking if they couldn't even get rid of Hamas entirely through military means, and they never could have done it through military means only, are they going to just from the air get rid of the IRGC?
Right.
GC.
We have a clip of Marco Rubio talking about the rationale for war. Let's go ahead and play that.
Does Congress have to weigh in? Does Congress have to weigh in? Is the president declaring war, and does Congress have to weigh in? And was there an imminent threat? Did you tell lawmakers that there was an imminent threat?
There absolutely was an imminent threat, and the imminent threat was that we knew that if Iran was attacked, and we believed they would be attacked, that they would immediately come after us. And we were not going to sit there and absorb a blow before we responded, because the Department of War assessed that if we did that, if we waited for them to hit us first after they were attacked, and by someone else, Israel attacked them, they hit us first, and we waited for them to hit us, we would suffer more casualties and more deaths. We went proactively in a defensive way to prevent them from inflicting higher damage. Had we not done so, there would have been hearings on Capitol Hill about how we knew that this was going to happen, and we didn't act preemptively to prevent more casualties and more loss of life.
I'm so furious about that. I mean, let's just start with this. the Americans that were killed in Kuwait. They were killed by an Iranian drone in Kuwait, and they were in a place that was undefended. So here he says, we knew, and yet he did nothing to protect them. They absolutely had no defense, and they were killed when those hit. So that's a lie. But my gosh, look, Israel. If Israel wants to go to war, Israel goes to war. They're not the United States. We don't have anything to say about what a sovereign country does, but we have a lot to say about what we do. Mm-hmm. We have NATO treaties for sure. Attack on one is an attack on all, but a preemptive strike because some other nation decides they want to go to war, that tells to me that Israel is in charge of America's foreign policy. Israel, not the American Congress, decides when we go to war. This is absolutely appalling, dangerous break in American sovereignty and American leadership. And I hope Congress gets to the bottom of it, because people should be thrown out of office.
But to that point, we have Mike Johnson in charge of the House of Representatives. We have a clip from him on his take on what Congress's role is here.
Mr. Speaker, is there at any point you think Congress will need to give congressional authorization?
So, you know my background. I'm a constitutional law attorney. I'm a jealous guardian of Article 1 in the legislative branch. My understanding of the law, and has always been, and this is the tradition and the way the law has been used and observed over many decades, the president was acting well within his authority. What I just told you is the scope of what happened here and the situational awareness that they had at the time to make this decision. It was not. It's not a declaration of war. It's not something that the president was required, because it's defensive in nature and in design and in necessity, to come to Congress and get a vote first. And if they had briefed a larger group than the Gang of Eight, there's a real threat that very sensitive intelligence that we had, might have been leaked or something.
So you know this because you were with me. The first time I saw this, I laughed out loud. I laughed out loud because Speaker Johnson says he's somehow jealous of Article 1 and the prerogatives of Congress.
A jealous guardian.
Yeah, jealous guardian of the prerogatives of Congress, right. Yeah, he's given them away as fast as he could possibly give them away. This is a defensive war, is hard to stomach. Whatever the secrets were that might have been given away are what? The Israeli targets that they were aiming for? They all have to go. I mean, look, it's just, I can't get out of my head the numbers of things that are wrong here. I mean, we went to war because Bibi went to war and we decided, we had to help him. We went to war because, as they said, they were an imminent threat, except we now know they weren't an imminent threat. They absolutely weren't an imminent threat. We went to war because of their nukes. But we obliterated their nukes. They don't have nukes. None of the reasons they're giving for us going to war are real, which is why no Republican will say we went to war, right? We sent the Department of War, and Pete Hegseth gave a big talk about how lethal we are and how we are going to kill everybody, but somehow it's not war. It's not war. We're not at war. BS, we're at war. And then they said what their goals were, Susan. Their goals: eliminate their Navy. That sounds like a war. Destroy their missile capabilities. Sounds like a war. Make sure they never get a nuke. Okay. Make sure they can't arm, fund, train paramilitaries in the region. Good luck with doing that from the air, right? Again, Israel hasn't succeeded in doing that with Hamas, with troops on the ground, with absolute air superiority, and with a brutal war that's lasted for years.
Right.
What do they think they're getting into?
And Donald Trump would not rule out sending troops on the ground. He also has given a number of timeframes. It depends on what outlet he's calling into, perhaps how he's feeling at the moment. But he has said anything from a few days to a few weeks to possibly more. So there's really, we have no sense of what the scope of this war is, what the objectives are. I mean, we took out the Ayatollah over the weekend. There's, and then Donald Trump gave a bizarre interview where he said, we had a couple of prospects to replace him, but whoops, we killed them too. So we'll just have to see how things go over there.
Look, this man's lack of curiosity and interest in the world it makes him completely ill-equipped for this. Does he not know? Look, we established complete air superiority in Iraq long before any troops were sent there.
Right.
We had, so all of those troops we sent died after we had air superiority, which we now have almost in Iran. George Bush declared mission accomplished. It wasn't. 54,000 Americans, $2 trillion. It was a disaster. Mm-hmm. And Donald Trump knew it was a disaster. He rode this political horse into the White House claiming it was a disaster. But he so lacks curiosity about the world that he hasn't learned anything, hasn't seen anything. He somehow thinks air superiority, we're going to bomb our way to what? What? Nothing.
So, Edwin, I have to talk with you about the fact that, first of all, Trump launched this war from his resort at Mar-a-Lago, not from the Situation Room. He didn't address the people of the United States from the Resolute desk. He was just, in some random room in Mar-a-Lago with Susie Wiles, who had her Apple Watch, because security is of utmost concern for these people. That's how this war began. And we're going to call it a war because we don't live in fantasy land like the Trump administration. Then he finally decides, maybe I'll go ahead and talk with the American people yesterday, when he finally decides to return to the White House. Instead of addressing the fact that at that point there were 4 service members who had been killed, 4 U.S. service members, now there are 6, he spent more time talking about his ballroom, about gold curtains, than he did paying respect to the dead. And I think we have a clip of that.
Nice drape. When that comes down, right now you see a very, very deep hole. But in about a year and a half from now, you're going to see a very, very beautiful building. And there's your entrance to it right there. In fact, it looks so nice, I think I'll save money on the doors, because it can't get more beautiful than that. I picked those drapes in my first term. I always like gold, but I think we can save a lot of money. I just saved curtains. But, and it will be.
So if you have your sons or daughters or your husband or your wife who has been dispatched to the Middle East to on this mission, and this is what you're getting from your commander-in-chief, I can't even imagine how you're feeling right now.
It just makes me so sad, Susan, that this madman is there. Look, he gave a 2-hour-ish State of the Union the other day, right? While he was okaying a war in Iran. He didn't think it was worth talking about that. He didn't think it was worth telling Americans that he's going to spend our young people's lives and the country's treasure again in a war in the Middle East. And he didn't think it was worth saying anything about. And then asked about it in the White House, he's like going on to talk about the drapes. And all of this is part of, his base didn't want to go to war. This isn't what he promised them. So he's going to pretend there isn't one, right? Oh, what war? What war? We're here to talk about the drapes. I mean, like Jeffrey Epstein, why are we still talking about that? The cost of living? No, that's a hoax, right? Like nothing matters. Nothing. Like the world he lives in is completely detached from reality. And you and I have known this because he lies about everything. But now it's coming home in the most brutal way. And he's put the risks to the world in a Sunni Shia war, big war, are enormous. And he hasn't thought about that. It's, I think there are a billion, I should have looked this up. I think there are a billion or more Muslims in the world, and they're divided, Sunni Shia, and that divide is enormously tense, and it has flared up from time to time. But the two biggest forces in that world, Iran and Saudi Arabia, and maybe Pakistan, and Pakistan is now at war in Afghanistan.
Right.
Right. All of this is related and enormously dangerous for the planet. But this uncurious, unserious interior decorator who, as president, is absolutely not fit for this moment. And by the way, and his vice president is even worse because JD, he's he can't even follow the news. He's running around trying to say what the president has done is right, but he's 2 weeks behind on what the president says.
Well, he wasn't even invited to the war room in Mar-a-Lago. He was left behind with Tulsi Gabbard, so he's not in the inner circle here. So, I mean, really, we can't trust what JD Vance is saying because he probably doesn't even know.
He doesn't know. And we don't have, I mean, we should worry because Iran is good at asymmetric warfare. We need a strong FBI, to be able to help protect us from what they could do in cyber and other places. Yeah, we don't have that. Kash Patel is a moron. I mean, the government is in the hands of fools, and we are playing with one of the biggest fires on the planet.
I mean, when you consider the fact of how many top military officials Trump has dismissed because they were not on board with his agenda, how many people that Kash Patel has purged from the FBI in his revenge spree. These are the experts. These are the sober voices we need right now, and we don't have them.
No, we have, Donald Trump loves to pretend to be strong, to show power, right? He tried it on the streets of Chicago and Minneapolis, and it failed. Now he tried it in Venezuela, and we got nothing. We spent a fortune. We took a drug dealer and put him in jail at enormous cost and risk. And he now he wants a bigger show. But this one has, many people could die if this spills out. I mean, millions of people if it really spills out of control. He has no plan, none, that would disarm the Republican Guard Corps, none. He encouraged people in Iran to take to the streets a few weeks ago, and they were shot dead, tens of thousands shot dead. He's encouraging them again, but with what? There are a million armed members of the government, a Republican Guard folks in Iran, and no one else has any weapons.
Right.
And they're willing to use them on their own people. Right. So what is he accomplishing? And then the spilling over, this bombings, that hit Saudi Arabia, that hit
the UAE,
the enormous airport in Dubai, that hit Kuwait, that hit Bahrain, that have now potentially closed shipping on the Straits of Hormuz and have today sunk the stock market and driven up oil prices.
And Israel has bombed Lebanon as well.
Sent troops into Lebanon, sent troops in now to finally take out Hezbollah and expand there. Look, you have to be able to, and Thomas Friedman said this, I agree with him. If you're thinking about that part of the world, you have to hold more than one thought in your head at the same time. And they're thoughts that don't always agree with each other. Right. Hezbollah is a bad actor, right? And Lebanon doesn't exist as a full country because its government can't control its own borders because Hezbollah, the militia, controls part of the country. So you want them out, and the Lebanese want them out mostly, not entirely, but mostly want them out. But they don't want them out. They're not going to welcome Israel as liberators.
No.
That's not what's happening over there. Not. Right. So it's very complicated and difficult part of the world into which you're a simple-minded fool who thinks, I can get press today. I'm the strongest man on the planet. I can blow anybody up. I'm not satisfied killing people on fishing boats in the Caribbean. I want to take on a nation of 90 million. and change the map of the world like Alexander the Great did. And while he's doing it, tearing up an international order that's kept us safe for 60 years, tearing up a democracy that has been the light of the world, even with our flaws. There's a reason why Congress has Article 1 power. I mean, Abe Lincoln wrote about it. Monroe wrote about it. They all think, like, if you give the president the power to take your money for war and send you to be killed, you're giving him the power to be a tyrant. That's why they said it belongs in Congress's hands.
Yeah.
And I know we've gotten away from that a lot, but Donald Trump himself just this December signed a law, the Defense Appropriations Act, that repealed the open-ended uses of force that were used in the Iraq War. Those are gone. The one that's left has to do with hunting down people from 9/11, and Iran had nothing to do with that. So he is not on strong legal ground here. Congress has to do what it must now and take up a war powers resolution. And I know the courts will never touch this. They just won't. But you know who will? The American people, and they're starting to vote all over the country today.
Right. And let's definitely talk, because we have some key primaries going on in Texas and North Carolina. But before then, Edwin, I have not spent as much time in the Middle East as you have, but I did happen to be in Israel near the border with Lebanon on May 24th of 2000, when Israel withdrew its forces after over 20 years. And we all at that time thought that we were finally entering a period of peace in the region, and there would be some sort of a lasting peace with Israel and with its neighbors, and especially in Palestine. It is so mind-blowing to me to see where we are today, where we have a warmongering president of Israel. At that time, Bibi Netanyahu was disgraced. We never thought that he would come back into power again. And yet he has effectively been able to cow the president of the United States and get him on board for his warmongering agenda. It's a stunning.
Well, they share an agenda. They share a war.
But only one of them really understands it, and that is Netanyahu.
Yeah, maybe he does. I mean, he's playing with fire too. When Israel's right-wing fanatics murdered Yitzhak Rabin, who was the peacemaker there, the country was at its throats, was as divided as we are in the United States now. And they said, oh, we have to come together. We have to put this behind us. We have to make peace. And the right wing ate the left alive and has been in charge ever since. And there's a lesson there for us, because I am not making peace with these right wing fanatics in the United States and letting them back in power after we take it again. We have to kill this virus, or we are going to continue to do terrible things at home and abroad. And this is a big potential war, an enormously expensive war. 6 are already dead. Many more are injured. I do not believe Pete Hegseth is up to the job of leading this effort. As I said, we already know that the ones who died in Kuwait were unprotected. And that's going to have to be something we look at very seriously and understand why that happened.
Yes. Those hearings that Marco Rubio was talking about, I think it's probably time for them in Congress.
We're going to start to have them, yeah. And I mean, Hegseth is not capable of this job, right? I mean, and do you really trust that we are giving our men and women the best protection and the best equipment they can have when suddenly Don Jr. is a major defense contractor? This is the kind of crony BS that is the reason why Ukraine is still standing. It's not because America is helping Ukraine. It's because Russia is so corrupt.
But did
You know,
did you see that post from Donald Trump this morning where he was blaming the fact that we don't have enough firepower because we gave too much to Ukraine? He's already scapegoating them.
um, uh,
And they are fighting for freedom and democracy. They are the good guys. And yet Trump has always been enthralled to his buddy Putin. And we have not stepped up the way that we need to help Ukraine, which it has been under a complete assault this winter, a renewed assault from Russia. And instead of helping that fight for freedom, we're helping Netanyahu with a war that is spinning out of control in Iran and beyond.
His hatred of Zelensky, his hatred of Ukraine, stems from Zelensky's refusal to lie for him, for which Donald Trump was impeached the first time, right? When he tried to withhold arms that the U.S. had, what that Congress said must go to them, and Donald Trump said, "I'm not giving them to them unless I can get Zelensky to lie about Joe Biden," and Zelensky didn't do it. And so he hates him, and he hates Ukraine, and this fascination with Putin is everybody knows it. Everybody knows it. There is no Russia hoax. The only hoax is that Donald Trump says it's a hoax. Russia has tried to help him in the election, established on a committee where Marco Rubio was one of the co-chairs, and it was unanimous in the Senate Intelligence Committee. The Republicans were in charge when they said Russia was trying to help. Rubio was on that committee. So again, the Ukraine war is lasting as long as World War II, it looks like. And it is as big a war as Europe has had since World War II. And the Ukrainians are fighting to save Europe from an expansionist Russia, something that every Republican used to care about. And now they just care about the gold drapes and the ballroom and whatever power they think they can hold on to, but none of it for the advantage of the American people. None of it, not any of it. And there is not a single Republican, there's no space. You saw this on the State of the Union where Donald Trump said, "Hi," and they stood and cheered.
Yeah.
They are wedded to his backside. There's not any room between the Republicans and Donald Trump. So when he goes down, they go down. And,
Right.
And we have to rebuild our country, and we have to. I won't live long enough to see us rebuild our relations with the rest of the world, but we can start to rebuild our country, and we can build it. Not return it to what it was, but build a future that we can all be proud of, and that our kids and grandkids can be proud of.
Well, Trump hates anyone with integrity, and that's one of the reasons why he hates Zelensky, and why he hates anyone in the United States who's been standing up for our democracy. I feel before we move on that we do need to address the elephant in the room. We've all seen, Trump's swollen ankles. We've become accustomed to the huge bruising on his hands. But yesterday, as he addressed the American people, there was a gigantic rash on his neck. We are being led by someone who is about 80 years old, who rambles incoherently half of the time, who has shown, signs of physical decline. There's been zero transparency on his health. And now we have 6 service members who have been killed abroad in a war that we have no idea how to end. We have no objective in. I mean, this goes beyond, just us talking, as political observers about our president. He is in charge of our national security. He has sent our troops into harm's way. I think we deserve to know if there is something serious going on with his health.
You're 100% right. I'm having trouble going there because I don't care if he's ill or not. He is in perfect health. He is disqualified from the job.
Absolutely.
And in ill health, he is disqualified from the job. It almost doesn't matter to me because his behavior is so appalling.
But does that
so
mean,
dangerous.
is he really in charge here? Is Stephen Miller making our national wartime policy with Pete Hegseth? That does.
That's probably true, but they all go away when he goes away. Right. So my view is like, she's too old, and we know this. Joe Biden got to be too old. You can outrun a lot of things, but nobody outruns the clock. And he's old and he's showing terrible signs of it. And I don't expect him to be any more honest about his health than he's honest about anything. He's going to lie, and we're all seeing it. He doesn't look like he used to look. He doesn't move like he used to move. Doesn't sound like he used to sound. And he works like 4 hours a day. And right. I mean, it isn't what we need. But if Donald Trump were in perfect health, he'd be just as dangerous. It's hard to watch anybody grow old. It's hard to watch anybody's health fail. But I got a lot of other people I'm praying for their health that are first, second, third in line, and he's not high on my list.
Understandable.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about some of the primary elections we have going on today. Edwin, I think Texas is probably the best place to start. We have a U.S. Senate race. The incumbent Senator John Cornyn was about as confused as everybody else about Iran. I don't know if you happened to catch his interview. This is a U.S. Senator who basically said, "I'm learning about this as you are," but he is fighting for his political life. Ken Paxton, the ultra corrupt Attorney General of Texas, who was impeached by members of his own party in the House of Representatives. He's challenging him. There's a big split in MAGA world with, various people connected to Trump on both sides of that. And then you have Wesley Hunt as well. That's what you got going on the Republican side. The Democrats have State Representative James Tallarico and Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. That's a very hard fought primary. There's a lot of debate who's the real progressive there. Edwin, what do you see as the dynamics on both sides?
Yeah. So what we've learned about Republican primaries is that policies don't matter. The only thing that matters is who's the biggest asshole. And that's why Ken Paxton has any chance at all, right? I mean, he belongs in prison. He escaped that. He was charged for a long time, and he had a long case. He belongs in prison. He should have been impeached. His wife divorced him for biblical reasons, she says. Right? He's whatever he is. He's a terrible, terrible, terrible man. And everybody in Texas knows it, which is why the Republicans might nominate him, because that's what MAGA is in the primaries. That's their base. Their base is like Pete Hegseth. I can be as angry as possible, as lethal as possible. I'm going to stick it to you. You're the problem. And the harder I fight to make you a villain, the more popular I get in MAGA world. That's great. I hope he wins the primary, because that's not America. It's just not us. We are as the first George Bush said, we are actually a kinder and gentler place. And he was from Texas. So I think Paxton loses. He loses. And he'll lose to either of those two Democrats. Now, on the Democrat side, there's a lot of press going out there saying, look, we're having a generational change. We're going to redefine the Democratic Party in this primary, one way or the other. And I'm very skeptical of that. It's a huge party. It moves slowly. We will definitely bring in some new faces, as we should. We'll definitely bring down the median age of the people who are elected, which is a very good thing. People have been there a long, long time. but when you really listen to these candidates, they're not that different. They're just not that different. They have some style points that are different, but I don't think their votes are going to be that different. And either of them is a fine candidate. I mean, the Governor Abbott has been running ads trying to boost Jasmine Crockett because he believes she's going to be easier to beat. I suppose he believes she's easier to beat because she's a Black woman, and in his mind, that makes her easier to beat. But that, once again, just shows where his mind is. I don't think it's true that Americans won't vote for a Black woman. The Texans won't, particularly over that horrid man, Ken Paxton. So I don't know who wins today. It's very close. But I do know this. Excuse me. Early voting in Texas has seen a 200% increase in Democratic voting. The Republican increase is there too, but it's tiny compared to that. So the energy is on the Democratic side. And I've lost too many bets over cycle after cycle saying we're going to finally take Texas. And so I'm not going to bet this time, not because I don't think it, but because it's been bad luck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Democrats are on a huge streak for both special elections and the off-year elections in Virginia and New Jersey last year. What kind of lessons have you taken from that, Edwin, in terms of how the party should be positioning itself, what kind of messaging, and what that looks like for the upcoming midterm elections in November?
Well, one of the reasons, look, Donald Trump is the main reason we are the energy in the party, right? He's just, you and I have talked about this. We have an unfit, terrible man in the White House doing terrible things to our country, and a Republican Party that's all bought in. So that gives us a lot of space. But what I appreciate about Democrats is they are not only focusing on that. They are doing what they always should do, which is focusing on the lives of the people in their districts or the lives of the people in their states. And so they're not the same thing. When Zoran Mamdani talks about what's needed in Manhattan, right, or in New York City generally, it's going to sound a lot different than, I don't know, a candidate for governor in Virginia, right? Or for the Senate in Texas. But these Democratic candidates are focused on the lives of the people in their states and what they can do to make it better. So you have this energy because Donald Trump is so unfit and his party is so uncaring about America. And then you have candidates focusing on, and this is true like from school board races to governor races, right? What do we need to do to govern well finally so that what we do helps the lives of the people in these districts? I love that about Democrats. And that doesn't mean they say the same thing. They don't say the same thing. We're a big, diverse country. They shouldn't say the same thing. They should say, this is what my people here need to make their lives better, and I'm going to fight for them. And I think that's fabulous. And that's the lesson I have taken from all of these races because they're so different, and that's the common denominator.
Well, on Lincoln Square, we will be tracking these primary elections tonight. We are bringing you ongoing coverage of the conflict, the war in Iran. Please stay tuned tonight at 5 p.m. We have strategy session with Rick Wilson, Joe Trippi, Max Boot. They'll be talking about the situation, the latest developments. We have Anchor Watch coming up this afternoon with Bobby Jones, special coverage of Iran. He's a former Navy commander who has been stationed in the Middle East for years and brings that insight to the table. And one other thing, if you're wondering what you can do at home, you're wondering how you can reach your member of Congress to tell them, yes, I would like some hearings on what exactly happened with our troops being undefended and dying. I would like them to assert their powers under Article 1 and hold a war powers resolution. We've made it easy for you. You can just click this code. It will bring you right to our page where you can contact your member of Congress, your senator directly, because we're we're here in the fight with you. We want to make it as easy as possible, and we want to send a very strong message to Congress. Edwin, you will be back with us later on this week for your show. It's The Democracy Stupid. Everyone, please tune into that on Friday afternoons.
Yep. Radley Balco's joining me. It'll be fun.
Radley is a fabulous reporter. He used to be with the Washington Post. Should be a great conversation. I know he does really great accountability reporting on the police in particular.
Yep. Before we go, I just want to leave everybody with one fact, a mental image. Yesterday, the UN Security Council met. And you know who chaired the meeting of the UN Security Council yesterday?
Yeah.
Right.
Melania
Trump. This is how seriously they take the world. This is the contempt they hold everybody else in. This is, as a very smart woman wrote me this morning, this is Evita Peron territory.
Yes.
You know, it's just, it's tin pot dictator nonsense that makes a mockery of the institutions, the talent, the values that have kept us safe, helped us prosper, given us our freedom for 60 years, all of which is under attack by these terrible, terrible people.
Edwin, thank you as always for joining us. I always enjoy these conversations in spite of what the topics usually are.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.